Hello and welcome to MSME Talks, conversations that are part of the ET MSME Awards. Leveraging tech and digitizing is a no-brainer for businesses now, either big or small. Who does not want to bring in process efficiency? But the challenges actually lie in adopting the right technology, sustaining it, finding the capital to invest, and finding the right manpower. How can we solve some of these challenges to accelerate adoption of technology to help small and medium businesses become more globally competitive? Now, to give us their thoughts on this, I have with me Harish Laddha. He's the CEO, Emerging Business, Airtel. Welcome, Harish.
Thank you, Melanie. Glad to be on the panel.
We're glad to have you. We have with us Amit Saluja. He's the Senior Director and Center Head NASSCOM at Gandhinagar. Very good to have you with us, Amit.
Thanks, Melanie. Pleasure for me to be here.
And we're glad to have you. We also have with us Dhiraj Agarwal. He's the CEO and co-founder, Campus Sutra. Good to see you again, Dhiraj.
Hi, great to be here. Nice meeting you again, Melanie.
Very nice meeting you too. And finally, Rohit Verma, co-founder and director, Dev Milk Foods. Rohit, lovely to have you back as a panelist this year.
Hi, Melanie. Good evening. Very good to be back here and good to see you again.
So, to be globally competitive, we need to have enough goods that are made well. When it comes to MSMEs, generally we've seen that there is a challenge of productivity. For example, in manufacturing, informal micro enterprises are responsible for about 80% of employment, but contribute to just 20% of output. So, my first questions are to Dhiraj and Rohit. So, Dhiraj, if you could start, both of you started small, right? Now you guys are very big players in your own segment. So can you tell us how did you go about the challenges of integrating tech and being digital? And what are the 2 tips from your learnings that could help businesses scale? So Dhiraj, if you could go first, please.
Yeah, sure. So Campus Sutra is a digital first brand, right? We are in a way, the company is a byproduct of the digital revolution that happened in India. And, I am a very big optimist, right? While a lot of people talk about the challenges of tech in India and with MSME, I firmly believe that we are poised to kind of drive this. We work in about 22 countries and we have seen how tech is growing in, say, US, Europe, Canada, and all that. And believe me, our experience has been that we are way ahead in adapting and kind of implementing it much faster than in some of these other countries, right? So that's one. Second, I think tech is becoming a part of life of any Indian. Let's just take an example of a WhatsApp, right? And if you go and talk to a lot of these micro industries or the fashion industry that I come from, right, used to have these pamphlets. It used to be very, very difficult to kind of, circulate that to your distributors, to your retailers. But now WhatsApp does the job. It was a technology not necessarily created for business, but 80% of the business is being run by WhatsApp. So I think a lot of digital drive that is happening in India, both for businesses and not so much for businesses, is going to drive the MSME forward. And the other thing that I think very, very strongly is that digital revolution in India is going to create brands out of India. We have seen China grow and as a manufacturing hub, right? I think India is poised to kind of be the brand hub with our education, with our tech, and a lot of tech businesses that are growing, right? You'll see a lot of consumer brands coming out of India and establishing themselves in Europe and a lot of other countries.
Right. Okay. So Dhiraj says that, India is going to be the brand hub. Rohit, give us your perspective, the way that you started.
So Melanie, just to give you a brief background again, Dev Milk Foods is into manufacturing of milk and milk products. We work with around 2,500 farmer families and we collect milk in a cooperative model and then process it into different products like milk, pouch milk, curd, paneer, ice creams, etc. So even though for us the direct implementation of technology is into manufacturing, there are other aspects that we took care of. And we started with a first vision of the company, that what do we want to do. Then we had the right consultant for that. Then we had a budget for that, what is the budget that we want to do, whether we want to do it in phases or not. And then we rolled it out. So as an example, the first thing that we rolled out was for our farmers. So what we did, we got a technology partner. So as soon as the milk comes to our milk chilling center from the villages, the milk is weighed, the fat SNF or the qualitative aspects is again digitally monitored, and immediately an SMS is shot out to these farmers that today we have received this much milk of this fat SNF, and this is the amount that will be paid. And the same SMS goes out to them every 10 days when the actual NEFT goes from the banks to these farmers. So for us, the first thing was to have an idea of what do we really want to do with the technology. It is very important to have a clear vision. Where will the technology impact your business, and your customers should be the main focus of it. So even though our customers are different, but for us, the farmers are the main backbone of our company. So we wanted farmers to be at the center of any digital initiative that we take. So now farmers have that confidence that as soon as their milk reaches our center, they get a very clear picture that this is what they have sent, and they've got a kind of ticket that this is what they have sent. Earlier, all this used to be on a paper, which used to reach them 2 or 3 days later. So we have reduced the 3 days time to couple of minutes or couple of hours to the maximum time, and that is how we have implemented the digital, and other parts of the company as well. Whether it is in finance, whether it is in CRM, the very important thing is to have the right vision. The second part is that when you go for software as service, you need not have so much of investment right at the point first go. You can have number of users, so your initial investment goes much down, and you can easily invest into the technology. And we also have number of cluster initiatives. We are here at Mahindra World City, so we have cluster initiatives where we learn from our partners that what is the best practices that they have done. As an example, our company is part of CII's cluster initiative. So we go to different companies, we see what has been done, and that helps in adoption of technology. So for me, the two things that I would highlight in technology adoption will be: one, get the right partner and vision. You need not reinvent the complete wheel and go on searching for things that what is right or wrong for you. And second being, learn from your peers. Your peers have already done a lot of groundwork, so you need to learn from them. So be a part of any industrial organization or any industrial body that you wish for. There are so many in India. There's FICCI, there's CII, there's chambers of commerce. So whichever you want to go for, I think these two things have been very, very effective for our company.
Right. And I'm also hearing from you the fact that, a targeted approach, figure out what you actually need, and then, put your money there. Harish, I'd like to come to you. Technology is seen as an enabler, right? Something that brings in process inefficiency. But, what do you do if 99% of MSMEs in India are actually micro enterprises, single person entities who are very hard pressed to invest in technology? So from your perch, what do you think can be done to help them adopt technology and, then push them to become globally competitive? Or, are we speaking of it a little bit too soon?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Melanie. I think, right now what Dhiraj and Rohit spoke about, correct? I think broadly, we keep on saying that every business has a trajectory of growth, correct? What started off as a couple of people getting together with a vision to solve a large problem, kind of becomes a large organization. And I think Dhiraj and Rohit's companies embody that today, correct? I think so. You go back to basically saying that maybe there are 3 or 4 things which are clearly required for SMB to kind of scale up, right? And we talk about things like access to the right amount of capital at the right kind of rates, correct? I think that helps, of course, for people, for the organizations to kind of pick up from there. I think the government is taking a lot of initiatives. I think the whole PEVC ecosystem in the country is kind of helping budding entrepreneurs to kind of bring the capital at the right price and help the SMEs grows. The second part of the story, of course, is to ensure that the right talent pool is available, for the SMBs to be able to scale. And I think, again, going back to what Rohit is saying, it makes so much more sense to kind of take inputs from your peers in the industry and maybe around to ensure that you potentially learn from some of the missteps that happen on the way and ensure that you're on a faster trajectory, to success or to get where you really want to. right? And the third thing, of course, is around, how can you ensure innovation? How can you ensure that the productivity of the organization is kind of where you really want to be, correct? And there, if you kind of think about it, is that, Dhiraj, I think, mentioned upon it, is that technologies exist today. There are technologies like WhatsApp, for example, which nearly every micro SMB, even large enterprises, are actually using to reach out to customers, right? How do you put it all together to do what is right for your customer? And then from there, scale up, right? So if you're using WhatsApp or if you're using SMS, how do you ensure that you're building a process around it? How do you ensure that over a period of time, your CRM kind of gets integrated, with some of those tools, so that you are more proactive in communicating with your customers? And like Rohit mentioned, reactive in some cases. You've got some input, you need to give information back. You're able to react in the right time frame to the customers, right? So I think it's a question of having the right mindset and vision for your organization of where you really want to go. And if that happens, there are so many models today as a service. There is no longer a case that you have to invest, you have to make a decision of investing a bunch of money in one application, and then you're not sure whether it's going to work for your organization over a long-term period, right? So, that's the way I really look at it, Melanie.
Right. Amit, taking off from where Harish left off, for a lot of these micro enterprises, I think there is a lot of confusion. Like, okay, so what do you do? This is what we're using in terms of technology. What do you go for first? What is it that is going to give you benefit? You lead the NASSCOM Center in Gandhinagar. Can you give us a sense of perhaps some, on the positive side, the advances that you might have already seen in terms of MSME productivity due to the digital revolution that we have ongoing? And then speak to us also about some of the challenges that you see on the ground.
So, Melanie, so maybe I think let me start with the challenges first, because I think that will help in setting the context. And I think Harish gave a good start to it, and then he already covered most of it, what SMEs are looking for. Now, from a micro enterprises, I think we'll have to understand these are the people who have not even experienced technology, who have the awareness level within the micro manufacturing MSMEs is kind of an extremely low. They are a typical manufacturers who understand how to produce a product in a way that it has been defined. But how do you use actually technology and what technology can do it for you? That's kind of still very far away. So while Harish talked about the talent, I think I'll go maybe a step further, and I'll say that what it is needed is building the digital capabilities in their, even if it is a small organization, but building a digital capabilities in the organization. So even though the companies might not be adopting a lot of solutions here, but at least they need to start with the first step of understanding what technology can do for you. And this is not just, you can say that it's the MSME owner who needs to understand. It should be understood by the people who work in the organization also to some level. So for example, like the blue collar workers, even the blue collar workers also needs to understand to some level, because they are the people who will be using the technology if it is implemented. So I think this is the first step where people should start understanding how the role that the technology can play in a different manufacturing function. So for example, how maybe if MSMEs are procuring the raw materials, right? So where it can help in the raw material procurements. The inventories, I mean, so if you go to any typical MSME plant, everywhere you will find inventory lying there, and there is no clear understanding of how much inventory is there in the stores, how much of inventory is basically there, and with that inventory, how many days of production can happen, correct? So there is no clarity. Now, if a manufacturer starts getting a feel of like is able to do a inventory management in a better way, then a lot of these things they will start understanding, and in fact, when people actually do it, they start realizing the benefits. So this was just an example of what really we need to do. And now since you also asked about some of the shining stars or some of the examples where at least I have seen the technology adoption has started happening. So first thing is basically, I'll say the ERP has started coming in. I will not say ERP is still a complete digitalization. It is still only a start, but the good part is a lot of companies have started adopting the ERPs. Then the next thing which basically I have seen is companies have started at least 1 or 2 solutions. And what this is doing is that basically giving them a feel of what technology can do for you. And let me give an example of where they have started using. So one is the quality inspection. I think that's the most simplest, but the most important area where the technology can help them in improving the operations. So if you see the in every manufacturing plant, you will find the workers manually inspecting the products at different production stages or once the product is made. And now these are the products which are made in tens of a thousand. So worker is inspecting thousands of products in a day, which makes it definitely error prone. So whatever the skills that worker brings, there is a chance that worker will miss out those defects. So now using the computer vision, it's a very simple solution. It's a camera which is mounted on a machine, and that whenever that product is manufactured, the camera monitors, and then AI basically does the analysis, and it gives a signal whether the product is a defect free or not. So simple solution, and I have started seeing companies have started adopting. So that's the other area. So basically these small individual solutions, some companies have started adopting, and what these companies need is more and more success stories, so that they can learn from others' success, and then they can also start doing it, because that's the other also inhibition people have, that whether this technology will work for me or not. So if an MSME sees that this technology has worked for some other SME, then they start getting confidence. So I think which is what then need to be done.
Right. So essentially, you're saying that the adoption has already begun. It's happening. Maybe it's happening in silos and in bits and pieces, but we are on our way. And more success stories need to emerge so that others can gain confidence from it. Harish, want to come back to you. You spoke about the micro enterprises earlier, and Amit took that conversation forward. When you see the rest of the ecosystem of small and medium, which is just 1% of the total 6.3 crore MSMEs. Again, now enumerate their challenges when it comes to digital adoption, because their challenges will be completely different to, say, the micro. And how can these challenges be addressed adequately? Do you think we really need to put the micro, small, and medium in separate silos? Maybe in terms of policy, maybe in any other way, so that we can sort of help respond to their challenges better. Harish.
Yeah. No, Miloni, and I think I think you've raised a very important question. But before that, I think going back to what Amit was saying, right? I think when he spoke about, could we have SMBs kind of look at whether this solution is successful in another organization and then look to adopting it, right? I think a lot of I kind of compare it with a lot of large enterprise customers, right? You go back and say that. You look at initiatives, you look at best practices in the organization, and then you try to replicate it within the organization, right? Sometimes it's, if you're an India-based company, you replicate it in different geographies within the country. And sometimes if you're a global company, you kind of try and take best practices from one country to the other. I think that's the conversation broadly saying that, if you have if you have the textile industry or the footwear industry or some other manufacturing industries, how can we take best practices from that industry, and how can we get the help of the different industry bodies to create success stories and evangelize them in different forums, right? And that automatically kind of helps. It's good for the vendors as well, because for someone to reach out to so many MSMEs across the country is a tough ask by itself, right? To be able to have a conversation and talk about why my product will help you, improve your business is not the easiest of things to do, correct? So I think if we could build a model for that, I think that would be really, really fantastic in the country. It will give a boost to the whole adoption of digital in these companies. But coming back to SMB, I think absolutely right. Again, I go back to an example saying, whether it is Dhiraj, whether it is Rohit, all of us segregate our customers in one way or the other, right? We have high spenders, medium spenders, laggards. people who buy only when there's a discount, people who are willing to buy the latest stuff, etc. Right? So I think within the MSME bracket, we need to kind of split maybe two ways: the size of the organization, and secondly, which industry are they potentially belonging to. Correct. And then try and put together different conversations because the requirements are different, right? So the way Rohit was explaining about what Dave Milk Food does, right? Now, I'm sure that when we started, there was an agenda or vision of where you wanted to go, but it was not executed in one single step. There were different, you said, okay, phase one, I'm going to do this. If I meet these goals, I go to phase two, I go to phase three. And the requirements in every phase kind of kept on changing, right? So I think we have to look at the opportunity in a similar way, to say that if it's and I'm being very simplistic when I'm saying you look at revenue and number of people, but you also look at the markets they're addressing, in which industry are they belonging to. We really need to segregate the SMBs into different buckets and then go after them. I'll give you a couple of examples from what we learned at Airtel. Okay, and I think COVID-19, like everyone says, has been a big enabler of people adopting digital. For a lot of micro enterprises and small businesses, we used to have something which we call a simple broadband solution, right? But what we realized over a period of time, that the problem that the customers has is not to just have connectivity, but also to have security, to be able to do video conferencing, to be able to have an email, maybe a couple of email IDs which are associated with their business with a domain name, right? So what we did is that we came up with an integrated product, which we call the Airtel Office Internet, where we talk to the micro SMBs and say that, look, if you buy this one product, it's a single price, billed on a monthly basis, right? But you not only get connectivity, you also get security. So we'll protect your endpoints as well as we'll protect the pipe. We'll also give you a couple of licenses around office productivity software, but we'll also give you a couple of licenses around video conferencing, and all of that at one price. Right? And we will install it within 24 hours for you to take advantage of it. Right? I think, that product proposition has really, really worked for us over the last, 15 to 16 month kind of a time frame. Right? So the advantage, of course, is that, Airtel is a trusted brand for a lot of SMBs, because one way or the other, they have kind of touched Airtel in their lives, right? So when someone like Airtel goes and talks about saying, look, I'll protect your connectivity, I'll ensure this happens, I think, there was a lot of, Airtel became kind of a close advisor to them, saying, look, this makes sense. And a lot of SMBs, we realize, is buy because either someone else has bought, or because they have someone who recommends it, someone like a trusted advisor recommends them, saying, look, don't worry, take this, I will support you. I'm available on a call if you have a problem, right? And I think that's where, if a lot of technology providers can come together and build solutions which are SaaSified in a sense, so you actually pay per use and pay as you use, easy to consume, easy to upgrade, downgrade, and ensure that we're able to land these solutions with the SMBs. I think that will help make it just easier for them to consume, and then decide that let it reflect into some business outcomes for them. So then they are able to put money and ensure that they are able to scale from there. That's the way I look at it, Melanie.
All right. Dhiraj, I want you to come in at this point. But, speaking from your segment now, India aims to be a global manufacturing hub. The government's national manufacturing policy says that, 25% of GDP should come from manufacturing by 2025. But with the current policy regime, with the same set of rules as we discussed earlier with Harish for micro, small, and medium, the pace of tech adoption that we see in the space, the gap in finance, what's the kind of role you see MSMEs play in this vision of India as a global manufacturing hub? Also, if you could enumerate from your vantage, what are the pain points for businesses such as yours? I know you've been very positive and said that you don't think of challenges, but if you could give us so the insights could benefit us.
Yeah, sure. So Miloni, before I come to this, I actually have a very different point of view than what Amit presented, right? On the entire technology adoption in MSME, right? Many times, especially in the corporate world, I have been part of corporate world before I started Campus Sutra. We start equating technology with ERP, or we start equating technology with automation, right? Technology for the SME is not that. if there is a 5-10 member company which is starting manufacturing or starting a service industry, for them technology may mean something completely different. So how you source your product, right? So 10 years back, for example, the only way you could source your product in India was by knowing somebody, or by just building relationship with somebody and things like that, right? Now you have an infrastructure where a lot of that information is present digitally, right? And a lot of people, even very, very small companies, use that. If you look at how people were keeping their accounts, right? Even 10 years back, I know Tally was present, but there was a dearth of anyone looking to automate accounting, right? Now Tally and Zoho and a lot of other websites have just kind of, coming to kind of even selling, right? Earlier it was all in a way offline. You had to have a distribution network and all that. That has become digital. So I think that's the third point. And the fourth point is technology for every company is very different. Like my friend here from the milk industry was saying, right? Technology is about sending the message to the supplier, that your milk has been received. For Campus Sutra, it might be in terms of, we are using technology to understand what are the trends of customer in terms of fashion, right? What is it that is going to succeed, in fashion whenever we are launching a line? Or how do we run our operations and things like that? So how do we automate that? So technology in the new age has evolved. And for every industry, for every company, technology might mean something very, very different than how traditionally we think about technology. So that was one point that I wanted to kind of bring across. And I think very honestly, we are ahead of technology compared to a lot of other countries. And I can just give you an example, right? As I said, Campus Sutra is present in about 22 countries. We are the only fashion brand to be there in 22 countries. And we have closely seen how operations is run, or how, some of the simple APIs work in, say, a US market or a Canadian market versus India. Believe you me, we are at least 10 years ahead, right? We are doing in ops, they are doing in ops what we used to do 5 years earlier, right? So I think we are way ahead of that, right? While coming to your question about government, I think, there's a lot of work that is happening in terms of incentive and a lot of other things, but I still feel that the challenge that a lot of MSME faces in India is more physical than digital, or, incentive and things like that. So what I mean by that, even in a place like Bangalore, right, which is supposed to be a startup hub, right, you don't get electricity. At least, on Sundays, more often than not, half day there's no electricity in most of the industrial areas, right? So that is a cost, right? When traveling on a road or transporting a goods on the road for 5 kilometers takes you 2 hours, right? That's a cost to the business. So a lot of those challenges are something that the country needs to focus and kind of, attack, rather than thinking about digital, or rather than thinking about incentive, because a lot of these are actually cost. That while we talk about, India not being competitive and 80% contributing 20%, right? We forget about a lot of these costs that get added, right? For big companies, maybe, they don't, they kind of have their own systems and they're able to absorb that. For MSME, that is a direct cost. So if I have to put a generator and invest 25 lakhs on my, power backup system, that is a direct cost on my balance sheet. That's the money taken away from what I could have invested in business. So just to give you another example, right? I know it has been long, right? If you look at, and I've had the good fortune of visiting China a lot, right? 16, 17 years, I've been there at least 3-4 times every year. Whenever the government looks at creating infrastructure, right? One of the first places they do so is in the industrial belt. And if you look at India, unfortunately, the worst infrastructure in any city or any place you'll find are in the industrial areas. The roads are absent. There is no water. Everything is completely in a mess, right? So it's about prioritizing. When you're saying that we have to build manufacturing, more than incentive, what you require infrastructure in the industrial belt. You require infrastructure where your factories are present. Digital, you don't need a government to push digital, very honestly. I think, we Indians are smart enough, jugadu enough to kind of, do it ourselves. But, where the government actually needs to pay attention is in terms of creating this physical infrastructure.
All right. You pushed ahead some of the ground truths. I think, some of the big pain points for a lot of SMBs. Thanks very much, Dhiraj. Rohit, you have anything to, add to this?
I have, I would agree partly with Dhiraj and partly not with him, in the sense that, the place from we operate infra, and we have seen this change happen in last 5-10 years, irrespective of which governments came in. So it is not just about the governments, or I think the way India is moving ahead, we are seeing a lot of improvement. You can say the improvement is slow, but I would still say that
It's
as an
definitive,
example, we
it's
operate.
happening.
It is different. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is happening. Second is that your question was the role of MSMEs in the global competitiveness, or how do they contribute. So what happens is, when an MSME works in a country, it contributes in a very inclusive manner. You have people from the bottommost strata of society contributing to the country's GDP. Okay, so I think the role that MSME plays is where no other company goes, where no other person goes. An MSME, brings about an inclusive growth at a very low capital. You don't need a very high capital to bring that growth. At a very low capital, MSME brings that growth, and that is reflective in Make in India policy of the government as well. And then if we talk about the contribution of exports, in case we want to be at the topmost of the global economy, our trade deficit needs to reduce. For that, our exports need to increase. For our exports to increase, we need manufacturing to contribute. For manufacturing to contribute, we need to have the bottommost, a very inclusive growth to take place. So I think MSME are increasing, and they shall contribute greatly to India's competitiveness.
Okay. Rohit, if you could input on the talent gap, a lot is made out of it, that, there is a digital talent gap, and perhaps MSMEs also face that very deeply. And if you want MSMEs to move to new markets and beyond, from your own vantage and, from your own learning, can you talk to us about how do MSMEs go about bridging that sort of talent gap when it comes to digital, especially with a lot of AI, ML, IoT, a lot of disruptive, technologies are coming into play, and they're also sort of playing out in India. So, where will we see MSMEs with all of this?
So I'll split your question into two parts. The first one is that the unemployment in India is constantly increasing, or at least it is at the same rate, and it is not because of lack of jobs. It is primarily because of lack of upskilling. You have the lower most, the job profile being replaced by companies, and since you do not upgrade your lowermost staff, those guys are the unskilled laborers. They are not getting any new jobs in the economy. So I think, and for a company like ours, or for any MSME, we need to upskill our people, constantly. And that is not just digitally, that is in every strata. When we say Industrial Revolution 4.0, when we say that AI and all these things coming in, we need to upgrade our manpower as well. Now, this helps us in a couple of ways. One, you're able to retain employees. Your employees remain loyal to you when you contribute. When they see that they are learning something new, they remain loyal to you. Two, you add to the competitiveness of the company. If you send your employees to learn something new, if the learning can be done in various ways. One, you do it online. One, you send them to some certification course, or you send them outside. You invest in them. So I think that is one way of staying relevant, staying competitive, and then you bring in efficiencies. As an example, when we had implemented any new software, be it in procurement, be it in purchase, be it ERP, you have these companies coming in and they ask that we would be training your manpower for 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months on a constant basis, and we'll help you upskill your manpower. So any person who is learning new things is very happy to learn new things, and they contribute to your company's competitiveness and efficiency. So how I see it is that an MSME contributing to country, the only way is you upskill your labor on manpower wherever you want to, and you add new resources. So I think that is what we need to do.
With the current macroeconomic situation, in terms of, we're seeing high inflation, high interest rates, there's conflict in parts of the world. There has been a choke in funding. For instance, in September 2022, the funding from for startups was 83% down compared to the same period last year. How do you see this slowdown in funding impacting, or do you see it impacting the digital and tech adoption among MSMEs? And how do you see startups being able to manage, or what are some of the tips for startups to manage in this period of low funding?
What is happening in the market is the best thing that could have happened, right? Last year was the time of excess when 2 rupees was being spent to generate 1 rupee of revenue, right? And in an environment like that, you have funding. Funding becomes a differentiator, right? The person who can raise the most is in the news the most, is kind of is winning the most, so to say, that's what it seems like, right? It is in a market environment like this that actually strong companies emerge. So that's my view. That's one. And second, I think it's always in the downturn that great companies are built, right? Because great companies are built with solid fundamentals. They're not built with money. They're built with, a good product market fit, how much energies you have put in terms of, understanding your consumer, what is your value proposition for the customer. And funding does not buy a lot of this. Funding buys you the glamour. So we believe that it was long overdue. I think this is the best thing that could have happened to the industry. Couple of years of low funding is actually very, very good for the ecosystem.
There are so many government schemes to help MSME grow, right? The Credit Guarantee Trust Fund for Micro and Small Enterprises, the CLCSS scheme, the Aspire scheme. There's liberalization of FDI, all geared towards ease of doing business. According to you, what are some of the most impactful policies that you feel the government has set out? And what is the sort of impact that you see of all of these schemes on the ground?
So basically, from a policies point of view, what government has done is through an industry policies, there are a lot of incentives which has started being given to the MSMEs for the adoption of the technologies, and which is actually kind of working to some extent. And in addition, there are a lot of incubation centers also, like as part of the startup funding policies, there is a huge grants which are being given to these startups, and these startups basically, as part of that grant, are developing products which ultimately are going to the SMEs. So that's the other area where the government is kind of supporting. Now, the third thing is basically setting up the specific center of excellence. So, for example, at NASSCOM, there is a center of excellence which has been set up by Ministry of Electronics and IT and the state governments and the center which I head. So that center basically has been established primarily with an objective of building an ecosystem for the manufacturing digitization in the country. So the initiative which we are driving here, it's a government's help to the industry to learn about how to adopt the technologies. And also, like, we are also building a startup ecosystem. So basically, startups, we have a acceleration program that we have for the startups, where we mentor them, guide them, and then help them in working with the industries and deploy the solutions. And there are a lot of funding connects also, which we are enabling for the startups to reach out to the VCs and also receive the government grants that that government is providing. So those are the other things which we are helping those startups. So I think in a way, this whole initiative of building an ecosystem which is to support the adoption in the manufacturing unit, especially in the SMEs, I think this is also a government's incentives or a program only which is working. So these are the different ways that government is providing assistance to those SMEs.
Amit, if you could also speak about what more do you see from a regulatory or a policy perspective that can be done to foster the growth of MSMEs?
So right now, basically from the SME department, there is a new kind of programs which are coming in. I'm really not. I can't highlight a lot of those things, but definitely there are a few more things which are upcoming, and these are the things which will further motivate and bring benefits to to those SMEs. Now, from the incentives point of view, or the monetary benefits, while there is a lot of funding which are being given to the startups, to the SMEs, it is basically offered in a selective area. So that areas basically needs to be expanded. So that more and different kind of solutions it can be adopted. And these are the things I think which is right now the work in progress. Now, one more thing I think we all need to do is basically considering there is already so many programs which is available, but the challenge is not every SMEs is aware of it. So that task in hand is how do we ensure that whatever it is already available, how do we communicate to the SMEs so that they can come and they can take the benefits of those. So that's the other thing. So the even government is also focusing on creating more and more awareness. But then, I mean, if all of us also can join hand and then somewhere start communicating to the SMEs that there are a lot of incentives available, which sometimes don't even get utilized properly. So if we can do that, I think it will be a big help to the SMEs.
All right. Okay, Amit, thank you so very much. Now I just have time for last inputs from all of you. So Dhiraj, Rohit, and also from Harish. So Dhiraj and Rohit, to you first. I have two sets of questions. So, respond to them and from your vantage, especially from the regulatory and the policy perspective. What are your expectations? I think Dhiraj outlined in terms of physical infrastructure, but what else would you like to see? And also the fact that with 5G and BharatNet, we will soon have the largest digital populace worldwide after China. How do you see the next stage of growth for Indian SMBs? Dhiraj, if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. So I think, the biggest help from the government in the last 5-6 years has been GST, right? I don't think it gets spoken about that much. More often than not, we hear the word GST in negative light, but I think it has been like the single most important policy decision that has been taken by the government after 1991. I think it has been just mind-blowing, the impact that it has had on businesses, right? In terms of policy that I would expect, I think one thing which this government is already doing, right? So there's a lot of impact and there's a lot of focus on building physical infrastructure. I think maybe some kind of special attention to industrial units, industrial areas. While I understand that there are a lot of new industrial units and industrial areas that are getting built, right? But what about the units which are already there, right? So if Pina in Bangalore has, I don't know, thousands and lakhs of factories, can we improve the infrastructure of that? If Ludhiana already has a huge belt where manufacturing is being done, right? Can we improve the infrastructure of that? I think that's something that the government can look at. The third thing I think is, we are being a little overprotective with our foreign trade, right? While it is important that we build our export capabilities, a lot of it is interlinked. And by being too protective and increasing, I think, duties on some of the imports, right? We are actually, while we are not realizing it, we are hurting our exports, right? So every panel that we put in terms of reducing import, it also has an impact on the exports, right? So whether it is just in terms of how the imports are processed, how much time it takes, what the duties are and things like that. So I think the government needs to take a more broader view, spend some more time in terms of understanding the entire value chain, and then take some of those decisions.
All right. Rohit?
So I'll answer both the questions. One is the digital expectations and the other part is how the 5G rollout will impact. So the first part is the digital part. I think a lot of steps are already being taken by the government. As an example, a lot of permissions are now online available, wherein you apply and you don't have to go individually to the departments to get those clearances. So I think that work needs to continue and it needs to fasten up. And we need to have a much robust infrastructure, digital infrastructure. So Dhiraj spoke about that in terms of physical infrastructure. There are no roads in certain areas of, Similarly, we need to have optical fiber lines. We need to have a complete digital structure in place so that it should be plug and play for any SME. As soon as they come into that industrial area, they should not worry about, digital lines, electricity, water. I am just including, to Dhiraj's point, I'm including the optical fiber internet and similar things. Another aspect is that government can help in terms of building a robust infrastructure. For example, the number of transactions are increasing, but how safe are they in terms of cyber security? Is there a policy of the government that, if somebody's systems get hacked, or if somebody's money gets stolen, he should not be worried about that, in terms of the policy of the government. He should be able to say that, yes, fine, I'll be able to get my money back, or I should be able to get back my business. I've seen a lot many examples wherein the complete, because of lack of understanding of the promoter, that they do not understand how a backup needs to be taken, or how why it is important. They have lost their complete data when the money was demanded. So I think some regulatory framework or some policy needs to be strengthened up, so that the SMEs feel, or at least they understand that, what is there for them in this space. Second part, in terms of 5G rollout, I think it is still, as much as I understand 5G, I think the latency levels are very low. So you have a very fast speed. And then in terms of the bandwidth is very high. So you can send, a higher uh, sized files onto the system. So I think once rolled out completely, I think it will speeden up the number of transactions. It will improve the customer experience. For example, an industry like gaming will gain a lot of out of having a 5G network. When you play on a 5G network, you'll gain a lot of it. Any important services like hospitals, which are doing, they will gain a lot of it out of it when they'll be able to do things in real time. So I think too early to say, but overall the digital infra of India is going in the right place, and I think every individual is going to benefit out of it.
All right, Rohit, thank you so much. Actually, Harish, this is the right question for you. With 5G and BharatNet, how do you see this powering the next stage of growth for small businesses?
Look, I think, when the country went down the path of 4G, right, little did we realize that, 4G and the connectivity it offers and the speed of connectivity it offers, right, would enable the so many businesses that we see today, whether it is food delivery, whether it is hailing a cab, whether it is your online shopping. I think a lot of it is mobile first today, right? And that mobile first is not enabled nearly necessarily by the fiber reaching your home, but it's enabled by 4G to a large extent, right? So I kind of agree with Rohit saying that as 5G comes in, it'll ensure that India is a land of entrepreneurs, right? And there'll be more and more use cases, case studies, applications, which will kind of get built on top of this network. And we're very glad to be kind of be the provider, the backbone for everything that gets built up, right? I'll go back and add to what Dhiraj said. I think if GST was an enabler, I think UPI was another large enabler, right? And I think that also happens on the back of a very, very strong mobility / 4G, 2G kind of a network, right? So I think with 5G and the rollout that Airtel is doing, nationally, I think it opens up a much, it really opens up the country to kind of have, offers more speed, more devices. Just for example, to say that within a kilometer radius of a 5G tower, you could have lakhs of devices. So if Rohit spoke about sending SMSs, I'm sure he's somewhere using, IoT to kind of understand what's really happening at the endpoints. Now imagine if your refrigerators start to have, order the milk or by themselves, having IoT device on top of it. A lot of these innovations will actually, kind of start to come in to be built by the entrepreneurs. So the way we look at it, honestly, is that whether it's 5G or fiber rollout, which Airtel is kind of really aggressively pursuing, it will open up opportunities for a lot more entrepreneurs to build solutions which are relevant for the real India or the real Bharat. Right? I think that's the way we really look at it. Last but not the least, Viloni, I think we keep on saying that as I think enterprise customers and a lot of startups have kind of understood this. But I think from an MSME owner perspective and our engagements with them, I think we have to make them realize that investment in digital, investment technology is actually an investment, and you can't look at it as an expense, which is kind of reducing your profitability, right? I think if that's the message we all can carry forward, and with the success that we have, two shining stars here with Rohit and Dhiraj, right? I think if you can showcase more of that, I think the real benefit of 5G and layout with fiber will accrue to the country.
All right. Thank you so very much for those thoughts. Amit, any closing remarks?
No, I think this was a great discussion, and I think we really made a lot of points, and then what we covered basically, like, while the policies are actually important, but I think there is also a awareness, which again I would like to highlight. Awareness is, I think it is extremely much more important. Let's not even make MSMEs depend on policies or the incentives to adopt the solutions, to adopt the technology. There has to be awareness that these solutions will help them ultimately save the cost. So these should not be considered, even these technology should not be considered as a cost. It should be more as an investment. And MSMEs, if you talk about judging what investment will work, what will not work, I think they are the masters of it. It's only a little bit of an awareness if we can give it. I think rest of the things MSMEs can do everything on their own without even any help. So they are shrewd businessmen. They know what will work, what will not work. So what we need is basically to give them the awareness.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so very much, Amit Saluja, Harish Laddha, Dhiraj Agarwal, and Rohit Verma, for joining me today and for sharing with us your thoughts on this topic. It's been wonderful having all of you here with us. Thank you so very much once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, the ET Rise team. Good to be on the panel. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Thank you.